Okay.
What are the ground rules? Any?
None.
No.
So you want F-bombs? You don't want F-bombs?
Just it doesn't bother me
Be
one bit.
yourself is what we want.
Okay.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning in to another episode of the Ybor podcast. I'm one of your half hosts, Max Herman, alongside me, Taylor Durden, as always.
Howdy.
And tonight, listener, well, I want to be careful about this intro, Taylor, because I don't want to make this guy's head any bigger than it already is. But this is a man who should have a big head in this town because for, 5 decades now, you've been spanning the scene of Ybor City, and not just any scene, I mean, every scene, whether it was the art scene or politics scene or historical preservation. I present to you guys the second best tour guide in Ybor City, Mr. Joe King Carter, as you may know him though, Joe Howden. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we're
Thank
glad
you
to
so
have
much.
And by the way, that long history I have is remarkable to me.
Yes.
And it happened to me.
That's the other thing too, is, I was telling him, you're kind of like the Paul Bunyan of Ybor. There's so many legends of you that sometimes you're like, well, that can't be true.
Yeah,
and you look
that
it up
can't,
and
right.
nope, that happened
That
to Joe
actually
Howden.
happened, yeah.
Yes.
So that's funny that you should say that. I serve still on the board of the neighborhood association that I founded. And when you say you are the founder, you never create a neighborhood association by yourself.
Right.
But I was the guy that went down and signed the charter, and I was the guy that was, pumping the chest to
Yes.
keep it alive. And recently, our board members did some research, and they sent out an email to everybody on the board that describes because we're still dealing with parking lots,
Yes.
illegal parking lots,
Yeah.
and this whole fight that I was going through, and it was all of these remarkable paragraphs and stuff, and I'm reading it going, wow, I've forgotten about that. I forgot about that. So what really happened to me was, in a way, my mother used to say, in life, people will piss on you. Make sure
You pay for it.
they know about it.
Exactly.
Make sure that they know you were pissed
Yeah,
off.
exactly.
So in other words, don't ever let it happen without putting a
Without
fight.
something, yeah.
When I came to Ybor City, there was so much stuff happening that was...
What was the year that you came here, by the way?
Well, I started doing things in Ybor City in 85.
Okay.
I started really getting committed in 88. In 88, I spent 3 years volunteering for a nonprofit art gallery
Yes.
that was on 8th Avenue, very close to where the Visitor Information Center is
Okay.
today. And it was called the Florida Center for Contemporary Art.
Oh, how lovely.
And it was really a cool thing because it was we don't have this today in Tampa, really. It was a gallery that had been created for emerging artists in the community.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I was working at the Tampa Museum as a preparator and installer and designer.
The Museum of Art.
Yeah, the Museum of Art. So I knew how to hang shows. I knew how to
Right.
do lighting.
Yeah.
So I got involved, and they needed my skills, and I was happy to do it.
Nice.
So that was the first time in my life I'd really volunteered my
Right.
time and not said, is someone paying me? And so I did that. And that sort of got me coming to Ybor City on a regular basis.
Yep.
Cool.
And I started eating lunch.
Yes.
And then I met Sarah Romeo. I don't know
yeah.
if you know Sarah Romeo. And she had a business on 7th Avenue called Romeo's Art and Furniture. And when she created that, she said, would you consider being here?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, that's a really cool thing. This is a time in my life, by the way, that working at the museum meant that I would work 4 hours at the museum and I would just go home.
Right.
It wasn't, I wasn't...
You weren't out and about on the town yet.
Yeah, I've always been a gig economy kind of guy.
Right.
And so, well, mostly I've had some real jobs. So, so Sarah says, okay, come on down. That really started to put me here right about 88, 89.
Yeah.
On a real regular basis.
You moved from 8th Avenue to 7th. You're moving on up in the world like George Jefferson.
Right, right. And I'm living in Hyde Park.
Uh-huh. Oh.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm living in Hyde Park.
Which was an artist district way back in the day.
Yeah, there was some stuff happening
Yeah.
there, and so I'm hanging out there. I'm living there, and basically I'm driving in on Nucio to 7th. I go home on Nucio.
Okay.
That's all I know about Ybor City.
Oh, that sucks.
I have a degree in art history.
Yeah.
So I'm aware of history at a kind of academic level. I'm looking at Ybor City. I'm learning about Ybor City.
You're seeing these old buildings and wondering, why are they still
and every now and then
like
somebody would talk to me and say, that's where Pike Rabinski got shot in the head, and things like that.
Yeah.
And so So I'm starting to fall in love with Ybor City.
Yep.
And Sarah and Jill Wax.
Jill Wax, from La France.
Other people are trying, and a guy named Daryl Shaw.
Heard of him.
They're all kind of working to help Ybor City kind of reestablish itself.
Yeah.
This is before the city had made the push to try to turn it
Yeah,
into
well, like at this time,
entertainment district.
and I read that Paul Guzio article about like you could take a nap in the middle of 7th Avenue and not worry about traffic because nobody was really around.
Yes, but that's kind of a myth. That's not.
Oh, well, it's a hyperbole. Yeah.
Yeah, because really that feeds the myth that the bars saved Ybor City.
Yeah.
Hadn't been for the nightclubs, we wouldn't have an Ybor City.
Facts are real.
Let me tell you what.
saved
Almost
Ybor
every
City.
storefront on 7th Avenue was rented, and it was
Yeah.
retail. It was retail.
Retail, that
and
was
it
what
was
was going on.
cool bohemian retail. Cool.
Yeah.
Really cool stuff. Tattoo shops, of course.
Yeah.
But beyond that, there was I'll go down a list. Three Birds Bookstore, Blue Cheer Music, Baby Doll Art. I mean, decades ago, really cool shops.
Yeah.
And that made me fall in love even more.
Okay. So you were
Okay.
into like the scene of like it was like this was where the hipsters would get around and be like, oh, you got to get to Ybor City. Nobody goes to Ybor City except us.
By
you know?
far the most hip.
It was the
place
coolest
in
place
Tampa.
around, yeah.
I'm an artist. I'm relating to the bohemian community. I know all the artists who are there. People like Rick Melby and all these guys, David Audette and others. And so I start to think about buying a house.
Yeah.
And I buy a house. Now, that's a whole story that I'm happy to relate at some point.
Well,
It's
we'll get there.
fascinating.
Yeah.
But the point is, I buy the house, and now I'm on a block on Fifth Avenue. I'm the only white guy on the block.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
The neighborhood is not really crime-ridden because crime is created by the Young Turks. And really, if you're 40, you're either in prison or you've already figured out the crime doesn't pay.
Right, yeah.
One of the two. So there are no teenagers in this neighborhood. They're all seniors. You know?
Oh, wow.
And so I'm on.
Hard to picture Ybor like that.
Yeah, it was. It really was. It was almost all elders. And I'm living on a block where I'm the only white guy, but all my neighbors are elder black people.
Yeah.
And they are wonderful people.
Yeah.
And they are like, Joe, did you eat tonight? You
Yeah,
it's like, hey, hi, Mrs. Jones. How are you? You
That's
know,
Taylor's block now.
Yeah.
That's basically where I live now. Yeah,
it was kind of like a Black Mayberry. You know,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
really very cool. And so, so that's happening. And then that's 91. I buy my house.
We're rolling into the 90s.
By 93, now we start to see these changes happening on
Right.
7th. And so...
because the castle opened in '92.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it became the nightlife
Masquerade.
area.
yeah, the
Masquerade
nightlife
was
is
in
growing,
92,
which at
yep.
first I embraced completely.
Right.
I'm not an anti-bar guy.
Right.
One time a guy called me an anti-bar guy, and I said, I'm pretty sure I've closed more bars than you've ever
Yeah.
But okay, so having said all that, but now it's getting weird. It's getting like they're giving every wet zone to every person.
Yeah.
that
Oh, yeah. That
requests
was
one.
an open town.
You know, oh, you're a pedophile. Doesn't matter. Go ahead,
Yep.
go ahead and get a.
Sounds like politics today.
Yeah, you get a wet zone, and now things like this are happening. The business is increasing on 7th,
Sure.
no doubt about it. People are parking in front of my house and tailgate partying all night.
Yeah.
I had a guy defecate on my steps. People are urinating on my porch.
Now that wasn't a personal thing. It was just a drunk guy.
Yeah,
Okay,
right,
just
right.
making sure.
Yeah, it wasn't a guy. Yeah, right.
I
Fuck
get
Joe
that.
Howden.
I get that.
Yeah.
I'm almost a mile away from the street.
Yeah, exactly.
So all that's happening, and there are no regulations. There's no noise ordinance. There's no
Right.
parking. There's nothing. There's no parking garage.
Yeah,
None of
this
that's
is before Centro and all,
all that's
that. Yeah.
going to happen, right?
yeah.
And one day, I'm feeling it. And my fellow residents, and there's a couple of other younger couples in the neighborhood who have moved in and doing what I'm doing.
Right.
And sort of pioneering. We don't think we're gentrifying. That's not what we're doing.
Right.
We love our neighbors the way
Right.
it is, right? Okay. So, but now things like the noise level, which will run that bass coming off 7th, not like today, even though sometimes we get a few offenders, but it would go right through your house because
Yeah.
you're living in a little wood frame house.
Well, right, your house is from 1927 or
Yeah,
something.
right.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like, you know,
My house is from 1894.
an original casita.
Yeah, it's an original casita.
We'll talk about that too, but go on.
So okay, so one day I'm in the backyard. I'm talking over the fence to my neighbor May Day, beautiful old elder black woman. She has a husband named Jimmy Day. Jimmy Day was this great big guy who had worked in the Parks and Rec department his entire life.
Right.
Now he's at retirement. We're standing there talking, as we did all the time, by the way. And I'm into plants. She's giving me plant cuttings. And it's like I'm in Georgia in 1930. And so, hey, how you doing? And so we're talking, and she said, hey, Joe, did I tell you that Jimmy had triple bypass heart surgery? I said, no, man. Is he okay? She said, yeah, he's doing all right. But, on the weekends, he has to wait until 3 or 4 in the morning to go to sleep because of the noise. She says,
man.
And that's what she says. That's not right, is it, Joe? And I go,
leading the horse to water, isn't she?
no, that's not right. And she says, well, she pointed right at it. She said, can you do something about that? And
Mr. Blue-Eyed White Man, can
yes,
you help me out a little bit?
That's kind of what was happening. And so I had been going to some different public meetings, and there was a lot of controversy, and some people were starting to scream about things. And so I said, yeah, okay. And then I decided to create the neighborhood association.
Yeah.
Now what happens next is something I would not have foreseen, which was up until this moment in time, I wasn't politically active in anything.
Right.
And now, because I'm the president of the neighborhood association, I have to represent the residents, my residents,
right.
on the YCDC development board, and on the historic preservation board,
right.
and on the chamber,
yep.
and on the this, and on the museum board, because nobody up until this moment in time has ever said residents have rights in Ybor City.
Wow.
Right.
And so that's where it all kind of began. And now, I've served on probably most boards that are in Ybor City.
So you're right in the middle of all of the turnaround, because we got our national historic designation, 1990? It was something like that with Tony Pizzo and his push and everything.
The first building was the Centro Español.
That makes sense, yeah.
I think that was 87 or 83, I can't remember.
And then it just kind of expanded.
There was a couple of buildings that got
Right.
it, and then they said, no, the whole district should be
And
inventoried.
that's kind of what's keeping, no matter how much money goes into these condos, it can't be, Pizza Hut presents Ybor City. It will
right.
always be Ybor City National Historic
Well, that's what
Landmark
happened.
District.
So what happened for me was, I used to have this thing that I would throw around and say, what we need developing in Ybor City are the 3 R's. Restaurants, retail, and residents.
Yeah.
Because we had more than enough alcohol. Okay.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Tell us the problem, Joe.
In the before I ever came to Ybor City, in
Yeah.
the early 80s, if not the late 70s, under the Mayor Friedman administration, they had made the decision to do something in which they removed the minimum distance requirements for zoning
Really?
in downtown Tampa, Ybor City, and what we call Channelside now, which they call the Banana Docks then. Their hope was, and what happens when you do that is that allows you, so a minimum distance requirement in any community in America, with the exception of Louisiana, which is Napoleonic law.
Yeah.
That's why you have New Orleans.
Right.
In any other place, you are, as a resident, protected, because this is why you always see zoning hearings where if a bar tries to come in within 1,000 feet of a church,
Right.
or a daycare center,
Yep.
or a school, you as residents have a right to complain about this,
Right.
and say, we don't want this stuff here, right?
Right,
Okay,
right.
fine. Well, that minimum distance requirement does that, but what it also does is it stops you from putting a wet zone operation within 1,000 feet of another wet zone operation.
Yeah.
Now, if you go down Del Mabry and think about it, every time you see a place that's not a restaurant,
Right.
has 51% food.
Right.
Every time you go down to Del Mabry and see a bar, there isn't another bar for a few blocks.
For a
Yeah,
while.
yeah, yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes
Now-
sense.
Now, they removed it here, and when they did that, they made it very difficult for our city council to have any reason to turn down a wet zone.
Yeah.
So suddenly, overnight, there were like
Everybody.
Bar after
there
bar
were
after
like
bar
4
after bar.
bars in
Yeah,
Ybor
yeah.
City at one point, and
Which
then
is
there was
part of the
8,
reason why
and then
people
there was-
love this town, though.
Right,
Yeah.
I get it, but it's not, my personal feeling about this, which will always be so, is that turning Ybor City into an entertainment district is not its highest and best use. Turning it into a mixed-use district,
Yeah, that's the
which
plan
then
now.
feeds the historic nature of
Right.
it, people were partying in Ybor City, as you well know as a historian, in 1890 when Mr. Ybor came here.
Well, let's get to the subject too.
But
about
let me
these.
tell you this. Let me tell you this.
Well, I want Taylor to talk eventually on
Oh
this
no,
podcast.
I'm just soaking this all in. This is great.
I think so. So I became renowned as an anti-bar guy.
Yes.
And I went to meetings where I had guys call me you're a communist.
Yeah.
I said no. I just want regulations. That I just want a noise.
Yeah,
ordinance.
right.
I want a parking ordinance. I want a trash ordinance. I want you to be a good neighbor.
Yeah.
And that's not the nature of that business.
Right.
And so. Sociologists, when you put wet zones next to wet zones, they have something called an accumulative negative effect. Basically, people get drunk.
Yeah, duh.
Yeah, right. And so, that became eventually, we woke up and saw that wasn't the best thing.
Right.
And that's why now we're moving away from that.
Well, now you got the Yes Team, you got what Daryl's doing with the multi-use thing, and at the same time, we still got the Castle and Disco Pony and all kinds of
sure.
Prana. You can have both, like you said.
But if we had a minimum distance requirement here, you would have three bars. Now, not restaurants again.
Yeah.
Right.
You'd have 3 bars per block, and that would be it.
That'd be super difficult too to try to figure out which ones get to stay.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's
And-
really unfair.
And the problem is now when you go down the 1600 block across from La France, that whole side, with the exception of Tabaneros and the other little Chin Chow,
Nicacabana.
the whole rest of it is dead until
Right.
10 o'clock at night.
Right.
And that's a problem.
Yeah.
So I'm a big proponent of a food 51%.
Well, we talked about this many times, Joe, opening a Cuban restaurant here.
Absolutely.
And I always thought there would be if I was a billionaire, I'd buy one of these nice buildings and I'd turn it into a Cuban restaurant in the day. And at nighttime, bing, turn on the disco ball and it's a Cuban salsa spot. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean?
That
I
would be
mean, the
perfect.
best of both worlds.
That would be perfect. And that would probably still be a low intensity kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh man,
Now-
amphitheater would be great for that. You imagine
That
a
big amphitheater spot?
revolving restaurant floor.
Anybody anyone who's listening to this podcast, I've said this how many times, I'm blue in the face. I'm working at the Visitor Information Center for the Chamber, and I'm telling strangers coming in, somebody open up a damn Cuban restaurant
really,
in Ybor
though.
City, and you'll make a fortune. Because here's how I know this. They're coming in from Germany to the Visitor Information Center and saying, where can we get Cuban food?
Yep.
And if I say the Columbia restaurant,
They know
no,
exactly.
no knock on that. They say, well, that's a Spanish restaurant, isn't it?
Yes.
They, in Stuttgart, they know the difference between Cuban and Spanish.
They've been to Cuba.
They've been to
You know
Cuba.
what I mean?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
So it's a completely different. Now, I do want to share this story with
Of
you
course,
real quick,
please.
because we're in the Cuban Club right now. As this
Yes, I want to
podcast.
talk a little bit about that too.
I want to tell you the story, which I may have told you, but how I came to really dig deep in is that when I bought my house, it was in that moment where I was sort of absorbing all this information.
Yes.
And like I said, they'd say, well, that used to be Santos Traficante's house.
Yeah,
that
exactly,
old
yeah.
casita there. I'd be
And you're like, oh, let me look up Santo Traficante. Let me learn a little
who's
something.
this guy, right? And by the way, when you say look up, this is no internet.
Right. Well, let me go to USF archives and find out who that was.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm like getting all this information in the neighborhood, and people are saying, well, that building used to be a pasta factory. And I was like, really? What? Okay. And so all this stuff is kind of hitting me.
Right.
And of course, I know the basics about the cigar industry. One day, I had this dog. His name was Sam, and I had adopted him, and he came fully trained.
Oh,
like by a
nice.
professional trainer.
Oh, wow.
He probably knew commands that I didn't know how to give him.
Right.
Right.
So he was
Just waiting.
Oh, he was this perfect dog. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, so lucky.
Yeah.
And so he was like a human. He was like a human on 4 legs.
I have one of those.
Yeah, it's just an amazing dog. So I'd take Sam for long walks, and I'd look at this and look at that, and this is what.
Interesting,
And one
yeah.
day I'm here in front of
The Cuban
Club, and I'm looking at the Cuban Club, and literally I'm looking up at it going, what the hell?
Because
And
it's gorgeous, and
It's
you're like,
gorgeous,
yeah.
and it's a building that doesn't seem to what is that exactly?
Yellow brick
Yeah.
compared to the red.
Yeah.
My best bet was that it was a library. That's what I'm
yeah,
thinking.
I could see that.
I
See
think
that.
that's a library. And so I'm standing there, and on the street level door, people are going in and out. And I'm like, oh, okay. So Sam was this kind of dog. I leashed him to a pole.
Yeah.
And I said, if anybody comes near you, just raise hell. And so,
Nice.
and he answered. He said, "Yes, I will."
Yeah,
I
yeah,
said,
yeah.
Wow, you are like a
Good
human.
dog, yeah.
No, but he was really cool. So this is before you could have a service dog and walk in with one.
Right.
I go in the door and there's 30 or 40 people, and there's a couple of sofas, and I look over here and I see this little window and I go, it looks like a pharmacy window.
Because it was still operating
And I
at that time.
look around the door. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I look around and I see on the glass door doctor's office.
Yep.
And then a woman comes out and she's dressed like a nurse. And I'm like, oh, this is a hospital. Now
part
I've
of
got
it-
it. Right?
part of it is-
So there's people walking around and there's some guy standing here. So I walk over to him and I go, excuse me. I go, what is this? And he says, what? And he says, what is this right here? And he said, this is a ciclo cabano. I go, oh, yeah.
Yep. Nailed it.
No idea what
What's
that
that
means.
mean? Yeah.
And he says, the Cuban Club. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, I'm new to the neighborhood. He said, yeah, you live here? I go, yeah, I bought a house over on Fifth Avenue. And he says, what's the address? And I go, he says, oh, yeah, those the Macalusos live there. I said, I know the house very well. And I go, oh, my God. And so he says, this is the Cuban Club clinic. And I go, oh. And then he says this, the Mutual Aid Society.
You're going,
and I
derp?
Go, no, here's what I do, of course. I say, oh, yes, the Mutual Aid Society.
No,
Naturally,
yeah.
Yeah, like I'm faking it now, right?
Right.
And so, people are talking. All of a sudden, when he says to me, I come here every Saturday with my father. Now, this is...
What year was this?
This is 91, 92,
91,
somewhere
okay.
in there. I'm a much younger man than I am now. I'm looking at this guy. He looks like he's older than dirt. I mean, I'm thinking this guy
father
is bringing his father here. So I go, oh, okay. And all of a sudden, this little old man, maybe 5 feet tops.
Nice.
Little black mustache, little David
Ricky
Niven.
Ricardo.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
he shuffles out of the doctor's office and he walks up and this guy goes, hey, Pops, this is Joe. And he says, he lives in the old Macaluso house on 5th. And he said, it's a pleasure to meet you, Joe. And I said, it was a pleasure to meet you, sir. And I said, and so I'm thinking, okay, I'm trying to put this together. So I said, you were a cigar roller? And he said, I was a cigar roller for 70 years. And I go,
wow.
Well, I go, oh, really? And he says, yeah. And he says, and I paid my dues and I'm going to get my money's worth. Now,
Nice.
This would be about 1992, and you couldn't go to a drugstore and have your blood pressure checked.
Yeah, there was no machine that
There
you
was
sat
no
in.
machine.
Yeah.
So he says to me, he says, yeah, I'm going to get my money's worth. He says, my son brings me here every Saturday to get my blood pressure taken. And I'm trying to get into this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find where the door is. And I go,
right.
well, I hope your blood pressure's okay. He says, apparently. He says, I'm 103.
Wow. Incredible.
103.
That's
And
awesome.
so I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking, I bet this guy smoked at least 3 cigars a day.
I have a theory. It's
Yeah.
good for you.
Yeah.
And so
I have a lot of theories like that too.
So literally, I turned around and walked out, and it was like Day of the Dead. I was like a zombie. I'm like,
What just
my mouth
happened?
is, like, what happened?
Yeah.
And so I walk out, I'm looking up at the building. By that Monday morning, I was at the John Germany Library downtown, and I was looking up mutual aid societies.
Yeah.
And I think that was literally the moment I got infected.
Right.
Is the only word I can think of.
You fell in love with it.
I fell in love with everything about it.
Yeah.
And then, as one of my cracker uncles would have said, I fell in love with Ybor City.
Yeah.
And it's been ongoing ever since. And I'm still reading, I'm still learning, I'm still trying to find
it's
out
so
things.
fun.
Oh, it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And so that's how I got infected.
Well, okay, Taylor.
Oh, I was going to say, with the house that you had bought, obviously, they knew the house.
Yes.
At what point in time did you learn about the history of that house?
So I buy the house, and I buy the house because, well, for a lot of reasons. First of all, buying a house even then was really hard here because it was just, people were just beginning to think, and you could buy houses in the neighborhood. I looked at a house for $6,000.
Good God.
Yeah, and
Just a lot alone would be worth.
I tell you what, I missed out on one on my street for $10,000 when I bought my
should've
house.
done
Okay,
it.
there you go.
I
There you go.
tried, but it was
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm more than willing to reveal. I paid $17,000 for mine.
That's
and the reason I
ridiculous.
paid 17 was because you could technically live in it. The bathroom worked.
Yeah.
And there were houses where the bathroom was falling, the commode was
Oh,
falling
yeah.
through the dirt.
Yep.
But you could get it for $8,000.
Right, right.
So I buy my house, and it was, this is a funny little story, is that there were beat cops in Ybor City when I came.
Yeah, yeah. There used to not be like TPD here. There was
Yeah.
like 2 or 3 guys that would just walk around.
There were
Yeah.
beat cops.
Yeah.
They walked the neighborhood, and they knew everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was a guy named Art Hutchins, great human being. And Art was, looks like this big Irish guy, and he's
Did he
Mexican.
twirl a baton like this?
No, well, but they were real beat cops. And so I told him, I said, I'm on the look for a house, And so, I was right at this, I was beginning to think, like, I'm not going to get a house here. And he says, he walks into Romeo's Art and Furniture and says, hey, there's a house right back here on Fifth Avenue. The guy that lives in it walked down to the little bodega on the corner and dropped dead. He said, I think that it'll probably be for sale.
Hallelujah.
And I said, oh, okay.
that's good insider information.
Yeah, right.
I couldn't get there at that moment. The next day I went, and there was a sign on the house, a handmade sign that said house for sale.
Yeah.
And so I called it, and it was a guy named Merrill Jacobs, and he was a Jewish guy, and he was the president of a major insurance company here in Tampa. And so I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. And so he says, I said, I want to look at the house. He said, well, I've got the key under this brick here, go look at it. So I go look at it. I realize that it's laid out exactly like my grandmother's house, which I thought was a good sign.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure what I was doing. I actually went to Jack Shiver.
Yeah, Jack Shriver, former owner of the Don Vincente.
And he was sort of known then more as a contractor that was getting involved in Ybor City. And so I said, Jack, I ran into him on the street. He said, would you go look at a house with me? He says, you know Jack. You talk to Jack, right? He said, He said, you know Jack. Okay.
Wild card. I love that dude.
He said, he says, sure, let's go right now. And so I said, okay. So we walked back there. He went through the house. He got under the house.
Sounds about right.
Crawled under it.
Crawled around, looked around, and he came out, and he's like brushing himself off, and he says, what do you want to know? I said, should I buy it? And he said, if you don't buy it, I will.
Nice.
I went, okay. So I bought it, right?
There you go.
Then at the closing, I'm there with Jacobs. I pull up to the mortgage company. In the parking lot of the mortgage company is like Mercedes,
Right.
Jaguar. And there was this one Mercedes that did not look like the rest.
Oh, boy.
And so I go in. I see Mr. Jacobs. We talk. We do the sale. End of story. As we're getting ready to leave, I say, Mr. Jacobs, and this guy, by the way, is like, he's wearing like a $2,000
Oh,
shirt.
yeah, I imagine.
yeah.
He's wearing the
Decked
best.
out to
He's
the
probably
nines, yeah.
60 years old.
Right.
So I say, may I ask you how you came to own this house? He said, oh, yeah. He says, when I was a boy, I had a nanny, and her name was Maisie. Typical kind of name. And he says, and Maisie raised me and my siblings.
Wow.
And he said, and when I went off to college, and I did all the right things, the right career path ideas. He says, I found the girl that I wanted to be my wife. He says, we came back, we immediately started our family, and I hired Maisie to raise my children.
Wow.
And he says, so really, Maisie lived with me my entire life. I said, oh, okay. And he says, and when my children were grown and she wanted to retire, I said, I'll buy you any house in Tampa you want, Maisie. And she said, Meryl, I want to live in Ybor City. And we drove down the street and she picked out this house.
Wow.
Which is not an impressive house.
Yeah,
in
but
Tampa.
it's just the one she wanted.
Yeah. And so she bought the house, right?
Right.
And he said, and then she took on a boyfriend named Benny. And he said, I was like, I'm not going to say anything to her about
Right.
that. And he said, she died. And on her deathbed, she took my hand and said, Meryl, please don't kick Benny out.
Yeah.
And so Benny lived another 5 years, and he's the one that walked down to the store
Yeah.
and died. And I said, oh, okay. And I guess nobody ever discusses Maisie with him, right?
Right.
This man, a prominent man in terms of money and
In a $2,000 suit.
Yeah.
Or a $2,000
reaches over and grabs my hand and says, Joe, Maisie was my mother.
Oh, man.
Wait a minute, not that bitch that raised me.
Oof.
Right? And he said, anything my mother wanted. And he started crying.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, okay.
Sir, this is a Wendy's.
Well, more tears on the podcast. Great.
But anyway, it was a great story.
Wow.
So, okay, to answer your question more directly, I'm in the house, and the third bedroom in the back of the house on the west side, I go in the bedroom, and the two of the walls are exterior novelty siding.
Okay.
So I realized this house has been expanded at some point. So I do my tax research. It says the house was built in 1921. I go to the tax assessor's office and I say, no, something's going on here, right?
Yeah.
I go to the library and find out that there was somebody in my house when the first telephone book was published in Tampa in 1903.
Wow.
All right. So I go back to the tax office. I said there was a house there in 1903, and it hasn't. This house has never. There's no.
Yeah.
It wasn't torn down and rebuilt.
Right.
And so they kept digging with me, and we went from 1921 to 1911 to 1902 to 1897. I think it is.
Wow.
I don't know what I told you.
Yeah, 1890 something.
Yeah. So it's basically 135-year-old house.
Yeah, man.
Cool.
Well,
And
legend.
was built by Emilio Pons, who had a cigar factory.
a cigar
across the street.
factory right where Jimmy Tacos is.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Uh-huh.
Kidding.
Yeah.
So what happens in Ybor City is that if you live here like I have, it's like you just keep these layers.
Oh, it just keeps coming.
These layers
I still
keep
learn
popping
stuff
up.
every day, all the time. Every single day I learn something new.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But,
And that's exciting.
And as exciting as that house is, I think the big question Taylor really wants to know about is the house that you used to own, which was legendary.
Yeah.
So this wasn't the same house then. So you've had it. Okay.
So what happened was.
So you moved a lot, just stayed on
No,
the
no,
same
no,
street.
I
Same
never
house,
moved.
yeah.
I never moved.
Yep.
I've owned in that neighborhood. I flipped 2 other houses to make money.
I got you.
But
Well, one was pretty legendary.
yeah, but
Yeah, I thought that's what this was.
I flipped 2 houses, but I co-owned this house. So really, I've owned 4 houses in Ybor City. But here's the point: there was a house next door, and there was a black, as I said, elderly black.
Right.
There was a 94-year-old black woman who lived in this house, and she had in those days they would call them a boarder. Which would be she rented a room to someone.
Right, yeah.
And the proviso of the boarder was that they would have to be somebody that would take care of her.
Right.
And so there was a boarder there whose name was it's escaping me, but at any rate, Oscar. And Oscar was a blues musician in Tampa. Oh, that's very cool.
yeah.
He told me like this.
Man, that's so fucking cool. I love this town so much because of shit like
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
I know he would say the first time when I first started to sleep in the house, Oscar was outside one day and he said, "Hey Joe, there was a black cat on your on your porch last night." And I said, "I was like,
All right.
yeah.
so what? I mean, a black cat, right?"
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I looked at him like, "So?"
Right.
And he said, a black cat, man, a dude.
You're like, yeah.
How good is that?
I'm
That's
hep
great.
to that.
Yeah. Oh, so anyway,
You're living next door to Howlin' Moon, man. That's amazing.
it's pretty interesting. So Miss Phillips, that's the name of this woman.
Yep.
She had 3 daughters. They were in their 70s.
Oh, wow.
And the kind of leader of the 3 would interact with me. And one day I said to her, "No, I hope your mother lives forever." But when
A
the
week
time,
later? No.
when the time comes, well, yeah, it wasn't too much later.
Yeah.
When the time comes, I would be interested in your house. This is what she says to me: "Oh, honey, you got the house. Don't
nice.
worry, you
Yeah,
got the
yeah.
house,
Nice.
right?" So I wasn't sure I could swing it on my own, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I had a friend named Ellen Marshall, another artist in Tampa, and she was looking for a studio. So I said, "Hey, Ellen, I tell you what, let's you and I split this." We paid $20,000 for the house. It's one of the largest ones in the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
It was built by Michael Licata, who was the #1 barber in downtown Tampa. So he built a kind of extra nice house.
Right.
Okay, so Ellen's in the house, and I'm supposed to move my studio in there, and then she had a friend who needed a studio, and just a series of events occurred. I never
Yeah.
did have a studio in there. I have a studio in my house I live in now. So eventually, we made an agreement that if somebody wanted to buy the other out,
Yeah.
so she eventually got married.
Yep.
And she
Moved on.
She moved on, and she wanted to buy the house, and she bought me out. And I did extremely well.
Nice.
Good.
Well, 20 grand is a pretty easy flip there.
Well, here's the best part. In the many years that I owned it, which was about 18 years, I never spent, my agreement with her was, you live in the house, you pay the debt service.
Hey, all right.
So I actually never spent literally one dime on the house.
That's great.
And she bought me out for $125,000 at the time.
Heck yeah.
So and now it's owned by Kurt.
Yeah, I know Kurt. Yeah.
Schneider?
Schneider? Sorry, Kurt. We're
gonna butcher this.
I'm so sorry, Kurt.
Slicer.
Yeah, correct. Perfect.
It's
Yes.
hard. But at any rate, but I had it for 18 years. It was the house where Victor Licata, who was a 20-year-old schizophrenic,
Right.
beheaded his entire family.
Oh, yeah. We talked about that on a previous episode, but we want to,
Right.
When did you discover that?
I knew it before I even bought the house.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Because what happened was...
I figured you bought it. You're like, wait, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. Is that why I keep all that crying around here? And I'm seeing ghosts everywhere? Yeah.
So on the other side, here's on the west side of me is the Licata murder house.
Yes.
But on the east side of me is a little shotgun casita, and there was a elderly black man who lived there named Lorenzo Johnson. And Lorenzo was this unbelievable character who was this sort of elder gay black man.
Interesting.
And his family had come from New Orleans. Right? You know, his grandparents had come from New Orleans. So he had that kind of way of speaking. So when he would talk, everything he would say was emphasized like this.
Yeah.
So even if it was not an emotional conversation, he would talk like this.
Oh,
Right?
that would be taxing.
It was incredibly entertaining.
I bet.
And he would be on his front porch with a little do-rag on his head, and my neighbors would come over and he'd talk to them, or my friends would come to visit and he would talk to them, and they would say, "You don't even need a TV, do you?"
Yeah, no.
With this guy there.
Yeah,
I
no.
mean, he was just full.
That's how
of,
my whole street is.
Oh
man.
yeah,
I don't.
amazing,
It's so entertaining.
African American history and
Right.
all this stuff, and there was people would go, and they all knew him in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
He was Mr. Lorenzo to everybody in the neighborhood.
Cool.
And he had. He was a major Avon
Really?
rep. Yeah. And
Really?
Yeah. And they sent him to San Francisco.
Yep,
they sent
yep,
him
yep.
to
Yeah.
Hawaii.
That's funny.
No shit.
He was the number. He was like a big guy in.
That's funny.
And he would in Avon, and he would say to me, "I have 130 women's who work beneath me." So. There was a guy. I'll give you one more Lorenzo story. There was a guy in the neighborhood named Bump.
Okay.
And
All right.
and Bump, when I moved into that neighborhood, I mean, I grew up. My parents had black friends, but that neighborhood, I'd never been around people that were so much living in the street.
You're from
Yeah.
Bradenton,
Yeah,
which is
it's a
cracker
small
country
town.
back
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And so, everybody in the neighborhood, all these black guys had nicknames.
Yeah.
There was a guy named Rabbi. There was a guy named Cigarette Boy. I mean, all
Yeah,
these
yeah,
things.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a guy named 8 Ball.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Of course.
he was this Bump, right? Well, Bump would encounter me on the street.
Yeah.
And he would come up to me and he'd say, "Hey, man, why don't we do that, man? Know what up?" And I go, "What?" And he go, "I say, what about that, man?" And I go, so one day I said to him, "I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying." And he said, "I say, what about my little down ball, man? Go wild." And I go, he just got louder, right? So one day,
he's louder, you can
that's gonna
understand it
help,
better.
right?
Yeah,
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 that's
yeah.
gonna
so one day I'm talking to Lorenzo and I go, "Hey, Lorenzo, what's the story with Bump, man?" And he says, "Bump." He says, "Boy ain't right in the head, can't talk worth shit." How's that? That's good, right?
Even Lorenzo's like, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
I don't know what he's saying. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, no.
That's amazing.
It wasn't. So at any rate, Lorenzo had told me. He said, at some point, he said, "That house right over there is where a bunch of people got killed." And I said, "Really?" And he says, "Yeah." Well, first time he said that, I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
And then we started. Of course, I would basically interview him. Is what I was doing. And he said, "Oh yeah," he says, "people come by here, they stop and get out of their car and take pictures of it." I go, "Really?" And so then I started doing some research and found out about it. Before I ever bought the house, I interviewed elders in the community because I had figured it out Victor Licata did this on October 17th, 1933. And I'm thinking, there are people still alive.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
That remember it.
that remember the incident. So
Yeah.
I thought, I'll do this. So I interviewed, this is a good part of the story. I interviewed, so he killed 5 people. His
Right.
mother,
Right.
his father, his twin sister.
Which were cousins.
They were first cousins.
Yeah.
Yes. and first cousins had been generational in that family for many
Oh, yeah, it was a
Oh,
lot of
yeah,
inbreeding.
yeah, yeah.
So this is why we're
Yeah.
beginning to see this.
Schizophrenia?
Yeah. And so his mother, his father, his twin sister, his 14-year-old brother, his 8-year-old brother.
Yeah.
And he had an older brother, Joseph Licata, who was at Stetson at the time, was saved. He was saved because he was in law school. And he came back and became an attorney in Tampa.
He said you never make anything out of yourself, huh? You're the only one living.
So I'm interviewing these people.
Right.
And this is what I discovered. You know that game Telephone?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Right,
Uh-huh.
okay.
Urban legend. Yeah.
Right. It turns out that all of these people had it wrong.
Yeah.
And they were there.
Right.
And they had it wrong. And so right behind the house was a house where Jenny, who my friend Don Barco turned me on to her. She had been a cigar roller. And so I interviewed her, and she said, "Oh, Pravi and I," the sister was named Providence that he killed. She said, "Pravi and I were such good friends. There was a rut between our back doors."
That's cool.
And I said, "Oh, okay." And she says, "Yeah." And she said, "You know how they discovered the bodies, don't you?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, he cut off all those heads, and there was so much blood that it poured out from under the front door on which that never happened.
No, of course. Right.
So she'd seen too many movies.
Right. Yeah.
So I was beginning to realize he killed 8 people. He killed 9 people.
Right.
He cut off the dog's head. They
Right. Yeah. They didn't even have a dog.
Right.
And so everybody had it wrong.
Yeah.
The last person I interviewed was a guy that was nearly 100 years old who lived on 4th, and his name was Nick Campisi. Great old guy, but he was kind of a bitter dude.
Yeah.
And 100.
Well, yeah. Fuck.
You know,
Kill me now.
I'm having problems. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm annoyed at 70.
Yeah.
I'm annoyed.
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
So basically he would walk with a walker and an air tank in his
Yeah.
nose, right? So one day I saw him and I'm talking to him and I go, "Hey Nick, you were here when the Licatas were murdered, beheaded in the house, right next to me?" And this is what he says: "Better off they're dead."
Wow.
And I thought, wow, he didn't like them at all.
Yeah.
And so I didn't think a lot about it. What he was really saying was, it's good that tree got cut down so that the genetics would not get
No
passed
more branching
on
out.
Yep.
because of all this inbreeding that was
Yeah.
happening.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, so then I get the house, and now I'm doing more research. I developed a friendship with a woman who was the managing editor at the Tampa Tribune, and I said, I'd like to get my hands on these articles about the trial. And she said, "That's a push of a button for me."
Right.
And so, boom, and I got 26 articles.
Nice. Wow.
I got every article about it. And I started really reading what this was about. And the fascinating part, as you probably know, is that right around this time is when the newly formed Federal Bureau of Narcotics was coming online.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
And
Yep.
the guy that they made the very first director, kind of like Hoover, who was the director for like 30 years like Hoover, was a guy named Harry Anslinger.
Yep.
And Harry Anslinger was a really hard-bitten racist.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was a real piece of shit. We've talked about him.
Yeah. And so Harry Anslinger wanted to make marijuana illegal, really, because it was mostly being used by either Mexicans or black people.
Right.
And it's just his way to knock on black people.
Yeah.
And so
easier to arrest them if they have something illegal on
that's
them.
right, exactly. And so he did everything he could, and he put together 203 cases of horrendous crimes that were committed by people who had smoked marijuana. And he presented those to Congress, and based on those 203 incidents, Congress voted on what's called the Marijuana Tax Stamp Act. This is what really led to making marijuana illegal.
Yep.
Now, here's the best part of this story. We now know that of the 203, 201 of them, we know for sure, are false.
Yep.
Complete bullshit.
That's crazy, isn't
right?
it?
And I'm sure the other two had some sort of
and
other
the other
factor,
two,
right?
the other two are certainly bullshit too.
Yeah.
We just can't prove it.
Right, yeah,
All right?
exactly.
Right.
Now it turns out that at the time this happened, which I did not know until I started doing this research, that there was a blood test for marijuana. in 1933. Who,
How about that?
Who would have known that?
Yeah, because
And-
we discussed that, because there's varied reports
Right.
that he was tested or
Right.
wotnot, but I wasn't sure if there even was a test.
No,
he
he
was
was
clean,
tested by
yeah.
the chief of police.
Right.
And he was clean.
Well, I knew that.
So
yeah.
he didn't smoke marijuana, folks.
Right.
What he did do that night was he went out that night, and he, by the way, the police had tried to get the Licatas to have him basically Baker acted into an institution
Right.
on 2 other occasions in which he committed violent crime, violent acts.
He's schizophrenic. He hears voices and
He's
attacks.
nuts. Yeah, he's completely nuts.
The dad sleeping with a gun under his bed.
Yeah,
that's how
that's
much
right.
he trusts his son.
There you go.
But,
That's right.
oh no, we'll take care of him in
That's
house.
it. And very sad.
It
The whole-
really is.
Really, the whole story is a very sad story because it has to do with family love and family pride, and they
Right.
didn't want to put him in an institution. And by the way, if you knew that schizophrenia was running through your family,
I would never have a
and
child.
wouldn't you start to feel like, we're kind of responsible for
Yeah,
this,
exactly. We're spreading the disease,
It's not really his
Yeah.
fault that
Yeah.
he's nuts.
Right.
It's my
Oh,
great
that too.
grandfather's
You'd feel a little
fault.
guilty, like
You feel
that's my
guilty.
baby. I'm putting him through this.
By the way, to that end, at the end of the trial, in which he was deemed
insane.
the Dream Slayer. Do you know about
Oh
this?
yeah, the Dream Slayer. Yeah.
No, but you wouldn't know this. Very few people know this because I have those 26 articles.
Yeah, it was nicknamed the Dream
On the
Slayer.
first article, he is called out in the article as Victor Licata.
Yeah.
Just in case you think, what is it? Yellow journalism and manipulative journalism
Right.
is something new. It's not.
Right.
Of course.
That writer, from that moment forward, for the next 25 articles, except for the last one, when he's sent to his sentence,
Right.
never refers to him as Victor Licata again.
Really?
He refers to him as the Dream Slayer.
See, I wasn't aware of that. I knew about his dream. What was like his parents were holding him down, cutting off his limbs or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, in his
But-
dream, his parents removed
Yeah.
his arms, replaced his arms with wooden arms with hooks,
Yeah.
and it freaked him out.
Yeah.
He went to the fireplace because that's where you keep the axe,
Yeah,
or the firewood, because you can't keep it outside;
Yeah.
it'll get rusted.
Right.
He goes to it, and what he said was that he remembered he could take the axe and wring it out, and
my God.
blood would drip out of the axe handle as he would wring
boy.
it.
Wow.
So he was just not
Oh,
in
he was
reality.
he was in a different world.
Yeah, he was right, not in reality. So, to the end that you were talking about, when the trial happened, virtually every Licata in Tampa was there.
Right.
And they pleaded with the judge to not send him to prison.
Right.
And that's why the judge sent him to Chattahoochee,
yeah.
state mental institution. So Anslinger uses this. And Anslinger is really responsible for reefer madness.
Right.
So in a very weird way, you can kind of say that for everybody who has suffered at the hands of, let's face it, a drug that makes you eat pizza and go to sleep.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
That all, and I have to say, when I'm 71. When I was 17 years old, I knew guys who had been busted for 2 joints,
Right.
who were doing 20 years in prison.
I'm much younger than
Yeah.
you. 20 years is a lot, but I know people who'd be arrested for a little tiny bit in their back seat, and they
Right.
go, "You're on probation for the next 2 years,
Yeah,
buddy."
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's this word draconian.
Right.
This was sentences that were so severely reactive
Yeah.
to what the real crime was.
Right. It was just
And
another
was
excuse to lock
all
up.
because of Harry Anslinger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you read the senatorial report, what you see is that it's really the Licata murders.
Yeah.
That the Senate went, oh well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's gonna chop people's heads off.
Yeah,
if, he
if you
smokes
smoke
this stuff.
marijuana, you're
Yeah.
going to be killing people with an
gonna go
axe.
insane.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was such a brutal, horrific, emotional killing.
Yeah.
Because he killed his own siblings, he
Right,
killed his
yeah.
own parents, and so all of that led to that law. So, that house in Ybor City
Yeah.
is connected directly to an entire history of
Yeah.
drug use in America.
Yes, exactly.
It's funny, after our episode came out, an old friend of mine, I've known her 25 at least years, she reached out to me, sent me a picture. She is related to Licatas by marriage.
Yeah.
And she was like, I always cringe when like this story comes back up because they're like the black sheep of the family. They don't really like to talk about.
And I'm sure it comes up at least once a year or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And like
I understand
it's
that.
one of the biggest legends.
So so you had someone in here talking about this before,
Right.
Yeah,
well, no,
we discussed it. Yeah, one of our episodes.
not
we
on
talked
the
about
podcast.
No, on the pod, we talked about Licata.
Some episodes, if we don't have a guest, we just talk about crazy characters like Jorge Tres or Licata, you know.
So do you know that? Joseph Licata, the oldest son,
The one that survived.
that was in DeLand, was coming home to visit his parents, and he read about the murders in the newspaper on the train.
That's terrible.
My God.
Yeah. Okay. Now Joe Licata comes back. And becomes an attorney in Tampa. He and his wife, no discussion about this.
Right.
And so now what happens next is, and see if I can remember these details.
Right.
Victor Licata goes to Rayford. No, goes to Chattahoochee.
Chattahoochee, yeah.
And he eventually will bust out.
Right.
In a laundry truck.
Yep.
And
Heads to New Orleans, doesn't he?
Well, here's the interesting part. For 5 years, he's
gone, yeah.
He's out in the world for 5 years. What does a schizophrenic do for 5 years? Let's back into that.
I can tell you some friends in Ybor City.
But let's back into that a little bit. This is the nature of schizophrenia too, because I've worked with schizophrenics before.
Yeah.
Is that it's not like a consistent kind of thing.
Right.
You can occur and respond in the world fairly normally. And you're probably going to
Until it
always be a little weird.
hits, yeah.
And then something happens and you're in an episode.
Right.
So, but could he survive in the world for 5 years? Probably not. Now, here's the thing. 5 years after he busts out of Chattahoochee, that's when he goes to New Orleans.
Oh, okay.
That's when he walks into his cousin's restaurant.
Right.
That's when his cousin calls the cops.
Okay.
And then he is sent to Rayford, which he eventually commits suicide in Rayford.
Right.
With a bedsheet. He hangs himself with a bedsheet.
Yep.
Now, the controversy about all this is, apparently, among people in the community that know these people closer than I do, was he kept by Joe Licata in his house for 5 years? Okay.
Could you imagine?
And so this is something that has repeatedly come up to me.
Wow.
Because,
that I've never heard.
Right. And apparently the attorney, Joseph Licata, passed, and his wife lived for quite a while. She may still be alive. I don't know. She may be alive. And apparently no conversation about this. You can't,
of course.
You can't break
You're not going to
into it.
ask her about it.
But there is, I believe, a daughter or there's a couple of females who are Licatas that have been by the house before.
Really?
And I haven't had a chance to talk to them. But they apparently are more willing to talk about this than anyone.
Well, did they come by the house after the recent news came out?
What happened was that when Ellen was living in the house, she told me, she said, oh, these two women were by and they were Licatas. And I'm like, well, and she says, I think they might be Joseph's daughters, but I don't know. Maybe they're not, right?
Right.
There's a lot of Licatas in town.
Right, yeah. Licata's a pretty common name. It's on the name of many buildings around here. Yeah.
Well, on Fifth Avenue, where El Puerto is now, is a Licata building.
Right.
The house on the corner, which is a B&B now, is a Licata house.
Right, exactly.
The house next door, where the
it's a
murders
common
occurred, is a
Italian,
Licata house.
you know.
And on the corner of 20th and 5th, Lucy Licata was still living there when I moved there.
Right.
And I wish I had understood this, I would have interviewed her.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, well, what I was referencing to is, and we don't want to talk too much about the Licata house all night, but like, didn't they discover recently somebody on their deathbed was confessing to something they might have done there?
Yeah. So that story is that a woman on her deathbed.
That's what it was.
Yes. A woman on her deathbed said that she knew a man who on his deathbed said to her, I murdered 2 women in the neighborhood and I buried them behind that house.
Yeah.
And this is like a lot of hearsay.
Yeah, that's a lot. Then back to telephone.
Yeah, that's right. So this actually prompted the FBI.
I was going to say it was enough hearsay for them to come
they
out.
started digging.
They came in, and so they came to Kurt, who now owns the house, and they did, is that called LIDAR?
I don't know.
Oh, yep.
LiDAR, right?
Yep, yeah. I've used LiDAR before.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
LiDAR is it's like a radar that can find things in the ground.
Oh, okay.
And kind of like a metal detector.
Right.
It's like it's ground penetrating radar.
Okay.
It looks like a big lawnmower, and
Oh,
they can
okay.
go
Right.
back and forth
Right.
across the yard.
Interesting.
And I watched them because, they
right.
very
When you want
interesting.
to
They can't
find
make me-
something.
They couldn't kick me out of my backyard.
Right.
So I was watching them. But they dug and they LiDAR'd and they dug and they LiDAR'd and they dug and they didn't find anything.
No,
okay.
I wonder because I see all the articles, and that was what 4 years ago, something
Yeah,
like that.
something
It wasn't
like
that long ago.
It wasn't too long ago.
Yeah, but I never saw any resolution to it. They were just talking
Well,
about.
they didn't find anything. But,
Yeah.
but Kurt was saying to me, how weird would it be that if that two more people were killed?
Yeah, I
in
know.
this
That'd
house?
be pretty
And I said,
wild.
that would be pretty wild.
It's a vortex at that point.
Yeah, it's a portal.
Now, the house, after the Licatas were murdered, the house sat empty for 17 years.
Ooh,
Okay.
you know there's some ghosts
Because
in that
nobody
place.
did not want
There's gotta
to.
be.
Nobody
Yeah.
wanted to.
Right, they don't
live
want to
there.
touch that. It was the
Right.
murder house.
Yeah,
it was the
yeah.
crazy one.
Yeah.
Now, of course, like that's the funny thing. Ybor's got so much national recognition that people don't realize. Like, the ties to the Reefer Madness, the ties to Spanish-American War, the ties to JFK and everything like that.
Absolutely.
But the more thing we want to talk about with you is the legends that you kind of created here. As this guy dug deep, he kept finding some random stories about you. First one we want to talk. Let's talk about the Radiant Rollers first. if you
Yeah.
don't
So,
mind.
do you remember the Radiant Rollers of Tampa?
Kind of.
Used to roller skate bar to bar.
Yeah. Right.
I saw something.
I'm cringing right now.
I
yeah.
saw
What did I do?
I saw something in 1986.
Oh my God.
Somebody, I believe his name was Robert. Something about the Loose Goose of Duluth, a public access show on that you were a goose in 1986,
Yeah,
a
let's
Christmas
hear it,
special.
Joe.
I got to hear about this.
Oh my God. That was so okay. Yes, I was in a video.
I dig deep, buddy. I tried dig. I dig deep.
I was really hoping that was dead. That was wow. You don't have Robert's? What is Robert's last name?
I do have his last name. It is, if you give me 1 second,
So
And we can always edit this down if we
Cable.
need to.
Robert Rohrbeck.
Yes, Robert Rohrbeck. Yes, dear Robert Rohrbeck. So an outstanding fellow.
Yes.
What happened was that early cable access TV.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, great stuff.
Access
love
cable.
public access.
You could go down and sign up and become a part of a show.
Oh, yeah.
And you could get trained, and then you would be by the training of that studio. You would be qualified to be a camera guy or a board director,
Or have a whole show if you want.
or have a whole show or whatever.
Yeah.
And so Robert did this, and I knew Robert through I don't remember how I knew Robert.
Yeah.
But at any rate, his family goes back in Tampa.
Okay.
And so he did this entire video, and I performed in the video.
Yeah, I hear you were the goose.
Yes.
And the rollers had to roll you.
Or they escorted you off a tarmac.
Something like that. And I remember being in white coveralls.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah,
And it wasn't particularly attractive with my even then pear-shaped body, but that's really all I remember from it. But it was a lot of fun.
But yeah,
Yeah.
and like little things like that are always fun. But like, I mean, legendary wise, also, I mean, Don Barco, you and Don. I mean,
Yeah.
he's one of the biggest names in Ybor history, especially for recent history.
Yeah, what my dear brother. It really was. I don't know how to explain it. It was sort of like I always thought that Don and I would retire and grow old together
Yeah.
as friends, and he wasn't supposed to leave so early.
Right.
Yep.
And cancer, and boom, he's gone.
Yeah.
And it just was heartbreaking, totally heartbreaking.
Yeah.
His son had passed, who had taken his own life, and Jerry, who was like my son.
Yeah.
And his wife Brenda is like my sister. I mean, we're all family.
Yeah.
But Don and I basically created King Corona together.
Right.
And it's a great story, and it was a great world, and it was a great life. And I never thought, when things are happening like that, and you're experiencing all of this stuff, particularly camaraderie.
Right.
So
Right.
King Corona had this magical moment in which people would just walk in the door and become your friends.
Yeah.
And it functioned almost like a social club.
Yeah.
And we just thought I thought it would never go away, and it went away.
Yeah.
And that's how it happens. That's what life teaches you is enjoy the moment, because that's all you've really got.
I wish I it pains me because I hear so many wonderful stories about Don Barco.
Yeah.
And I personally never knew him, unfortunately.
Oh,
If
really?
you would have been, if you would have sat down with him for 10 minutes, you would have thought you were best friends.
Yeah.
Right. And
He did have that ability. Yeah.
I've been going to King Corona since, gosh.
Yeah. So here's what happened.
Early
Would you like the
2000s?
backstory on that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I would love that.
So what happens is
Every time I hear about this guy, I love him more and more.
Yeah.
And, I wish.
He could have been mayor.
yeah,
You know,
well,
it was-
all I can say is we are a lot alike.
yes.
So
Both
if you love
lovable.
Don, you gotta love me.
Yeah, that's right.
No, but so now the bar thing's happening. Bars are popping in.
Yep.
And we're all freaking out. And we formed a thing called YAY, the Ybor Entertainment and Arts Association. That's where I met Daryl. And we're trying to boost retail and boost arts, and
Right.
you know, it's
Keep
sort
it
of
away
like,
from being Bourbon Street.
yeah. And so in the little shop next to King Corona that is now Cheeseology,
Yes.
was a store called it was called Julio the Mexican. And and it was a jewelry store run by the guy who owned the building.
Right.
Okay.
And his name was
Julio, I assume.
and Julio was this Mexican Jewish guy who had he looked like the director of Mean Streets and with De Niro. What's his name? The guy with the bushy eyebrows.
Scorsese?
Scorsese.
Yeah,
he looked
yeah.
like Scorsese.
Okay.
He had his eyebrows were like creatures. they
were
were
the-
like separate creatures.
They were
you
a
know?
separate person.
Unbelievable eyebrows.
Yeah.
This comes from someone who has no eyebrows.
Right.
But anyway, I would look at his eyebrows while he's talking to me and go, "What the hell's
Yeah,
going on?"
you were worried.
And so. So I would stop and see him, and this is what I did back in the early days. I'd walk into every shop and go, "Hi, I'm Joe. I live in the this is what I was doing. I was trying, I guess I was trying to find community then.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
So I'm talking to Julio, and in the space next door was because of his connection, was a Mexican family that the glass was all papered over, and they were running a clothing shop where they made clothes.
I see,
There were
okay.
like 30 sewing machines in there.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a sweatshop.
Yeah.
But the family, I knew the family because they had been coming to neighborhood associations. They were very nice people.
Right.
And so they moved. They left. And I said, "So Julio, what are you going to do with that space? Huge space, right?"
Yeah.
He says, "I don't know." I said, "You don't know what you're going to do with the spaces? I'm going to rent it."
Right.
And I said, "Who are you going to rent it to?" And he said, "The first person that gives signs the leaves."
There you go.
And I knew it was going to be a bar.
Right.
That space, a space that size on
It's
7th,
that big, yeah.
it was going to be a bar. And I thought, so I got with Sarah Romeo, and we started thinking and talking. And Don had said to me, Don Barco and his wife Brenda had a cigar place in Ybor Square, which was then a thriving
Before Scientology.
mall.
Yes.
Yeah. But now what was happening was the Ybor Square was kind of going downhill, and 7th Avenue was coming up.
Yeah.
And Don wanted a space on 7th Avenue. So I told him, I said, "I found your space." So we went over there one day. Julio gave us the keys. We walked in. It's this huge space. Now, Don, back in those days, all cigar shops were like tinderbox.
Yeah.
They were like
Yeah.
some little joint, you know?
Yep.
And so he said, "The space is too big. It's huge." I go, "Be creative, man. Think creatively. Come on."
Yeah.
And I said, take half of it and rent it out to a flea market, and you put your thing. Just
Right.
think about it. So he got with Julio, and I think Julio gave him a tremendous deal, and in terms of prices, and he took it on. Well, so I'm an artist, and he said, "I want you to help me design this," and we spent 4 months. We went from demolishing things to build out of things.
Yep.
And we created King Corona, basically. Me and him and his wife, Brenda. Basically, that was it. She's picking out colors. She's working with me. I'm working with her. And we're doing all this stuff. And in that process, Don, as we start to reach, they're getting ready to open their doors, he says, "You live in the neighborhood. Why don't you come work for me?" And, you're going to all these board meetings. I'll give you a fluid schedule.
Yeah.
If I needed to go to a board meeting at 2, Don would fill in for me, whatever, on the floor. And I managed his shop for a while and all this stuff. Now, and so then it became, when we first opened, it was me and Brenda and Don.
And what year was that?
That's 99.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because I think I started coming. It was like 2001 maybe when I first started coming.
Yeah. Now, here's what's kind of
2002.
interesting. When Don, so I'm like, I'm getting Don to, I feel like he's my friend,
Yeah.
and I don't want to abuse my friendship,
Right.
but I'm trying to get him to do this because I don't want to see this place turned into a big bar.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, today it would just be, so.
Yeah.
When he gets it, he says, because for legal reasons we can't call it Tampa Rico because I'm in partnership with my father-in-law.
That was the shop, Tampa Rico.
Yeah, Tampa Rico. He said we have to give it a new name. I said, well, this is a great opportunity for you to give it a new name. That's cool. And he said, yeah. And he says, I'm just, I feel like I need help. And I said, okay, well, I said, I think. Look, this is my feeling about Ybor City. And by the way, that's my feeling today. What is valuable here is our history. That's all that makes Ybor City important. If it wasn't for our history, this is Dale Mabry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is what I've been saying to people for years and years. That's why when people want to make it something it's not,
Right.
like we're going to make it a Bourbon Street,
Yeah.
or we're going to bring in a shopping mall,
Right.
or we're going to
Rays
get a
stadium?
baseball
Yeah.
stadium.
Yeah, exactly.
No. Look,
I agree.
if you go to Paris for the first time in your life, you're going to see the Eiffel Tower.
Sure.
Not because you want to see it, because you'll feel like a dumbass if you come
didn't
back to
go,
Tampa.
yeah.
When your friends say, well, what was the Eiffel Tower like? And
Yeah.
you say, I didn't see it. So,
That's very
So-
true. Very true.
Ybor City should be that place
Yes.
where people say to other people, oh, you went to Tampa. What was Ybor City
Yeah,
like? And they say,
exactly.
oh, I didn't go to Ybor City.
Yep.
What, are you an idiot?
Yeah,
Well, what's wrong with you?
why?
A moron?
Yeah.
So that's my feeling. Heritage tourism is the biggest form of tourism in the world.
Yes.
It makes far more money than Disney
Wine
World does.
tastings and it's
Everything.
yeah.
I mean, so that's where what I keep trying to say to these people is that if you're only about the money,
Yeah.
history should be your game.
Right.
Okay. Now, having said that, so I'm saying to Don, well, why don't you give it a historical reference? It's this big space. It feels like a club. So Don goes away and he comes back, and he was fluent in Spanish, and he called it something like the Institute de Tobacco Reserva. And I go, no.
That's a lot. That's a mouthful.
Yeah, right. And so, literally, we are literally like going to Home Depot every other day and buying stuff to paint and do and build.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we would sit up front where those papered windows were
Yeah.
and eat a sandwich or something for lunch. And so I remember this so incredibly clearly. I told him, I said, the guy that created the design for what is the apparel that Panama Jack? The
Yeah,
British
the
guy with
guy's
a little
face,
downturned
yeah,
hat and he's got a monocle. Okay,
Yeah.
the artist that created that. This is a legendary story among graphic designers. Got paid $100.
Wow.
And that was it.
That's crazy.
Oh man.
And so I told Don, I said, a figurehead would be really cool. Like Colonel Sanders,
Right,
or,
yeah.
whatever, right? Orville
Redenbacher, yeah.
Redenbacher, right? And he said, yeah, that's cool. And he said, but I don't want it to be me.
Right.
I went, okay, because he didn't have that kind of ego.
Right.
And so if it had been me, I'd be like,
Oh, it's
yeah.
Joe's place.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
Joe's
yeah.
place. But so, and the Panama hat every day. Right?
Smoking
So-
Joe. Yeah.
Right. So he said, so I said, oh, okay, cool. And so I said, well, what if we created a fictional character? And this guy has done everything in Ybor City. And, he was a cigar roller. And then he became a lector.
Yeah.
And then he became a boxer.
Yeah.
And then he became a revolutionary. And then he became, all these things in
Yeah.
Ybor City. He was a detective.
Right.
And you could fantasy, it's like, and that's when, what is that, the most famous man in the world?
Yes.
kind
Yeah.
of
Dos
meet-
Equis
Oh, yeah,
guy.
Dos
Yeah, the Dos
Equis
Equis guy.
Most interesting man in
The
the world.
most interesting
Yeah.
man in the world. That's when that was happening. And Don loved it. He said,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's a great idea." I said, "Yeah, we could write a whole fictional biography."
Yeah.
And it's just bullshit. We'll have so
Well,
much fun
so
doing
is a
it,
gas
right?
bar.
I love
Yeah.
shit like
And
that.
so,
Yeah, exactly.
So he said, "Well, what do you think we should call him?" And so he and I went back and forth, and we came up with some names that were not very good. And I said, a name that I've always thought in the cigar business, it's a really cool name, is the shape of a cigar that's called a Corona. And I said, I know it's a beer,
Yeah.
but it's a cool name. And he said, you know what it means? And I said, no. He said, the Corona is the crown,
Yeah, the crown.
of the plant. And it gets the most sun, and therefore those are the strongest leaves. And he says, they call it the Corona. And I said, oh, the crown.
The crown.
The crown. I said, that's really cool. And he said, yeah. He says, so it's like the king of the tobacco. He said, yeah. He says, like Ray. And I said, what is
El Rey, the king.
Right. What is Ray? And he says, R-E-Y. Not, he says, not
Ray
R-A-Y.
Charles, yeah, a different one.
He says, R-E-Y. And I went, Ray Corona. Oh my God, that's a great name for a guy.
Yeah.
He's a boxer.
Yeah.
He's a detective.
That's a pretty cool name.
Yeah. Ray Corona. Right? And I said, that's a great name. And he says, yeah. No, I know what it was. He said, he said Ray Corona. And I said, yeah, Ray Corona.
Oh, careful there, Joe.
R-A-Y.
Yeah.
And he said, no, R-E-Y. And then he said to me, I said, well, what is R-E-Y? And he said, that's king. And I said, King Corona. Boom. And Don went, King Corona.
Yeah.
And it was done.
There it is.
It was done. And that's how we got there. Now, the first sign that we ever had, and I wish I had a photo of it, I don't. I painted a 4x8 sheet of plywood. Nicely.
Yeah, nice plywood sign.
Based, but still.
Real classy joint.
And it was a picture of Ray Corona.
Yeah.
And,
that's cool.
Yeah, and he looked sort of like Ricardo Montalban.
Yeah.
And,
of course.
Right. And did you know that there is no such thing as Corinthian leather?
I was gonna. You know what's funny? You just stole those words right the fuck out of my mouth.
That's funny.
I was going because I will always equate him to the fine Corinthian leather.
Yes. But do you know that? Do you know what that's about?
I had read it years ago.
No, he said he was given the script.
Yeah.
He does the script for. Was that Oldsmobile? I don't know.
It was Dodge.
Yeah.
Yeah. He says a fine
Plymouth.
Corinthian leather, and of course Montalban is Mexican.
Yeah.
And so he says to the writer, "What is Corinthian leather?"
Yeah.
And the writer says, "I made it up."
Nice.
Yeah.
It sounds important.
Yeah, it was
does.
just pleather. It was just pleather seating.
Right.
Just very cushy pleather.
Fine Corinthian leather.
Yeah.
Corinthian is a type of column in Greek, in Roman and Greek architecture.
He put together a cool word, like
Anyway.
just making up a car part with some
That was the,
So
the
Don and I
Cordoba,
had-
by the way. The car was the
Cordoba, that's right.
yeah, the Cordoba.
Wow, we are time traveling now.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Don, so that's how we created King Corona.
Wow, that's
and
cool, man.
what began to happen was so unpredictable that Don or I could have ever seen what was going to happen. Is many times I'd be there at the counter, and Don would come down from upstairs, and he's having lunch, and people would come in, and they would just be sort of stunned. It had this feeling of like an old men's club.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was this
It
big
did.
space, right?
Yeah.
And before, it had one little TV. It
And
had.
that's because specifically Don did not want it to be a
Right.
sports bar,
Right.
because he wanted people to be able to get this
Talk.
Yeah, interact.
And
Go figure.
And Don and I spent hours talking about this.
Yeah.
And we would talk about the death of talking in America.
Yeah.
And how when we were boys, okay,
Right.
Don was 4 years older than me, 5 years older than me. And when I was a boy, here's an experience. I remember, of course, I'm growing up in the South, but there would be places where I would go with my father or with my uncles, and these were places that men hung out in. And
Right,
they were
only men.
Hardware stores, mechanic shops, feed stores,
Right,
all
yeah.
kinds of places.
Yep.
And I would be like an 8-year-old boy and just like
I had the same experience
I'm
with my old man.
Yeah, and I would
exactly,
watch them talking, and literally in my head, I'm thinking, I can't wait until I can grow up and sit around and talk with my friends.
Yeah, right.
And
Just shoot the shit wherever.
Right,
Yeah.
where is that now? It's gone.
Yeah, it is.
It's on TikTok.
It's-
yeah.
I take my kid all the time with me when, like, I go run
Yeah.
errands.
It's
like,
gone.
Hey, we're gonna go run errands, and I end up just shooting the shit for hours
Yeah,
with a buddy of
Yeah,
mine.
I mean, you're not going to
while
go to
he's
Starbucks.
stuck.
You go to
No.
Starbucks, you
Everybody's
pull out
on
your
their
laptop.
yeah, they're on
Right.
the laptop.
Did you know that now dancing is dying? Did you know this?
Dancing?
Yeah, dancing in nightclubs is beginning to die.
What?
Yeah, and you know why? Because everybody can video everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
they don't
fun.
wanna-
That's fun if you want to be videoed.
Yeah.
It ain't fun
You're
if you
supposed
don't
to
want
let
be
loose,
videoed.
man. Yeah, you're supposed to just
Thank God
dance
we
like
didn't
no
have
one's
cell
watching.
phones with when I was
I
growing
know,
up.
Thank God.
So these things shift and change. So what happened at King Corona was there were these conversations. I was managing King Corona on a Saturday night when the thing was really cranking.
Yeah.
And this was back in the heyday of the party, and I admit the party did well for King Corona.
Yeah.
And I had a person on the floor at the humidor.
Yep.
A person at the register, and then me. So
Yeah.
we had 3 people.
3 employees.
And there would be 25 people in front of that humidor, which Don designed as a humidor that you could just walk up to and pull things out of,
Right.
right? And so I'm there one night, and this guy walks in, and he's got this big floppy hat, and he's got about maybe a week, 2 weeks of beard, and tall guy, and he walks in, and he walks up to me, and this place is just like craziness everywhere. And he walks up to me, he says, "Excuse me," and he says, "Excuse me," and I look at him, and I go, "That's Jimmy Smits," and it was Jimmy Smits.
shit.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I look at him, and I say yes, and he says, "Do you have any kind of like historical information here, or books, or anything like that?" And I went, "Well, no."
Brother,
Yeah.
how long do you have?
Yeah, right. And so I'm looking at him, and he said, "Well, thank you." And he turned, he walked out. That was a Saturday night. He turned, he walked out, he hit the street, and as he hit the street, I turned to the person at the register, and I said, "That was Jimmy Smits."
Yeah.
Right? And she said, "Who's Jimmy Smits?" Okay, now, best part is I opened on Sunday. We would open at noon, and it was not so hard. So for some reason, I was opening. Somebody had called out sick or something. And so I'm there, and here comes Jimmy Smits.
Oh.
And this time, he comes up to the counter, and he says, "I've been all over the place." First of all, he walks up, and he says, "Do you have a cot in the back?"
Yeah.
And I said, "No, I just had to work a back-to-back shift." And he says, "I can't seem to find anything." And I said, "May I ask you what is this for?"
Oh, yeah.
And he said, I did Anna in the Tropics on
the Lector and
yeah, I did the Lector in Anna in the Tropics in off-Broadway. And he says, "No, I'm going to be doing it." That's what he said.
Oh,
"I'm going to be doing
wow.
Anna in the Tropics." And he says, "And I need to do research." And I said, "Oh." And I said, "I didn't know if this was for your house. You wanted images to hang in your house or
Well,
something."
for those that don't know, Anna of the Tropics won the Pulitzer. It was an amazing play about Ybor City and the Lector. And
yes, in 2002.
Early 2000s, yeah.
2002. And Nilo Cruz,
Yep.
who wrote Anna in the Tropics, came to Ybor City because the play takes place in Ybor City, and it's about a Lector.
Yeah.
And for a brief moment of time, Nilo Cruz was a superhero to Ybor City.
Well,
because
still to this day, and you probably get this too on your tours, people will come to me and they go, "I discovered this place because I saw Anna in the Tropics."
That's
and I
right.
had no idea Ybor City existed, and
That's
then
right.
they came on my
That's
tour.
right. That's right.
Oh, that's wild.
And so I got to meet Nilo. We had lunch together,
Right.
and it was a great moment. And so I knew about Anna in Tropics. So he's saying this to me, and I'm looking at him. He's talking, and I've never been starstruck.
Right.
I've never had an opportunity to be that starstruck.
Right.
I'm looking at him, and I'm just staring at his face. And the pause comes in the conversation. I go, "You were really great in El Gringo. You were really good in Old Gringo."
Yeah. Do a little dick riding. Yeah.
I was like a teen girl.
Right.
I was like, "You were really good in Old Gringo."
I
right?
saw you on a TV box.
in the moving pictures.
And so he says, "Oh man, that was a great experience. I got to work with Greg Peck." He said he was so awesome.
Yeah.
And so now I'm talking about movies.
Yeah.
With
a star.
With a star, right? And we're talking, and he says, "Listen, I'm going to be down here tomorrow. If you're going to be around, why don't we have lunch?" And I go, "Okay, that'd be
Nice.
great." And so I come in Monday morning, and not working, but I intentionally come in, and I go,
Yep.
and King Corona had Cuban sandwich. We had food.
I came in all the time for them.
Right.
They were excellent.
So I go to Don. I go, "Don, Jimmy Smits is going to come here and have lunch." And he said, "When?" I said, "I don't know, but you have to be ready.
Yeah.
I want you in the conversation." And so it was me and Don and from La Gaceta,
Patrick?
not Patrick,
Gene?
Gene.
Gotcha.
Gene Sweet. And so the four of us sat and had lunch, right? Cool. And the cool part of this conversation was, he says, I said, so what is it you hope to accomplish here? I'm not an actor, so.
Right.
He said, well, it's really simple, Joe. He says, if I'm playing a cop, I hang out with cops.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And if I'm playing an attorney, I hang out with attorneys. Mm-hmm. I can't hang out with lectors.
Right. They're long gone.
They're gone. That's what I'm doing. And I told him, I said, well, you know, you've probably already gathered this. The lectors are special guys.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, we have a line in Ybor City that goes like this, that the lector was the man that every man wanted to be and every woman wanted to be with. Mm-hmm. And he said, that's a great line. I said, yeah. I said, I can't imagine a lector being a modest, humble character.
Well, they dressed to the nines.
Right.
They had bodacious voices, and they were entertaining.
Right.
God, what a time to be alive.
Right. Well, especially if you were a lector.
Yeah.
Be a kid hanging outside, listening.
Through the windows.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. You know, when I use that when I do the tours with Max. When I do tours, I talk about that, and I emphasize that I literally say this in the tour. I say, imagine for a moment that you live, because your father, who's a cigar roller, has now heard the newspaper from beginning to end.
Right.
And Billy Bob in Iowa might know who the president is, and that's about it. Your father can dissect the internal politics of Stuttgart.
Yeah.
And then he is hearing the greatest novels of the day. And remember that this is during a time when there was no movies, no TV, and your
no
father,
radio in the house.
Right, no radio. And your father comes home and says, let me tell you the story of the great white whale and Captain Ahab. Your father is a college professor, right?
Right, yeah, in your eyes, yeah.
And that's kind of the way it was.
Right.
And so, in some cases, you know, and so it was a great opportunity. So, Smits told me that he was going to purchase the movie rights to the book. And apparently I understand I have a friend who's in the business who confirmed that, and nothing's ever happened.
Oh, that should be a movie.
Yeah.
I always
And he's probably too old for it now.
there needs to be more movies about Ybor City other than the Ben Affleck one and all that. I mean,
well, I will say to people on the tour when they say, wow, this is, they're getting it.
Right.
I'll say, oh yeah, there's a movie script here. If I were younger and more.
Well, Joe, you and I can lock ourselves in a room for a week and we could put something together, buddy. I mean it.
Will there be food?
Yes.
I got 1,000 monkeys with some typewriters.
It might be just as good.
Yeah, it's called Chat GPT.
Exactly right. Fucking A. Right. All right, we're 120 in, so we got like 10 more minutes before we have to cut you off here. But I mean, there's so much to talk about. I did want to mention about Kyle Lenz because I mentioned that you were coming on here, and he said I may or may not have almost killed Joe Howden. So if you feel free
here's
to tell
what
us.
happened.
Yeah.
Well, I'm willing to say this. Some key moments in my life have been associated with the smoking of marijuana.
Okay.
It is my generation that basically invented it.
I'm clutching my pearls right
Yeah.
now.
And I will tell you this quick story, that I had a friend in my hometown, and my parents had black friends, and my mother particularly grew up in South Georgia in a black community.
Right.
And my mother, I was not taught any kind of racial hatred.
Right.
And I am so incredibly grateful for that.
Right.
And so, but I had I knew a black guy that I worked with right out of high school, and his name was Mo Green.
Okay.
It could be a Jewish guy, but he was a black guy.
From The Godfather? Yeah.
His name was Moses Green.
Okay.
And Mo got the very best herb in the county. I mean, he was hooked up.
He was the king.
And so every now and then I'd meet with him somewhere at the Burger King or something.
Right,
I'd get some
Oh,
stuff.
we've been on a drug deal before, Joe.
Yeah,
We know
right,
what it is.
you understand. And so one day I say to Mo, he had an apartment, and I was still living at my parents' house because I was trying to save money.
Right.
I'm 19.
Yeah.
And so I said, I ought to come over sometime and we hang out. And he said, are you fucking crazy? And I said, what do you mean? He says, we can't hang out. And I said, why? And he said,
It's the clientele thing. It's a relationship.
He says, the cops are going to see a white boy and a black boy hanging out together.
Yeah.
They'll know there's drugs involved.
Right.
Yeah.
And I realized at that moment, this is what Mo taught me. I was entitled.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And he was not.
Yeah.
And he was dealing with another world.
A whole different world.
That I wasn't dealing with, that has to do with living black, driving black, being black.
Walking black.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
Yeah. And it was a huge moment in my life. It's sad. Really a sad moment, you know?
But, there's that window that opens, you go, oh, yeah. I mean, we all probably experience it over time. When you're kids, you don't think that way. But as you grow up, you're like, oh, there is something.
Well, that
here.
was that was a really big moment.
Right, yeah.
So I went to, this was on the night of a night parade. I can't remember what year it
In
was.
King Corona, right? Yeah.
But it was a night parade on the street.
Right, yeah. 7th
And I
Avenue.
used to be it's hard to believe looking at me now, but I used to be a competition dancer. I used to dance. Yeah. And so,
Old Fast Hips Joe there. Okay.
well, when I was in high school, I had a very broad taste and spectrum of music because someone had given to me a radio that was, I think they were called all-state radios, but it was this huge, it looked like a very large microwave oven.
Okay.
But I could pick up radio stations from
Oh,
Chicago.
cool. That's cool.
So when I was 14, I'm listening to the Chitlin Circuit and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to
Motown,
everything. So, most of my friends were listening to what was in the top 100.
Right.
And that could be anything from the Beatles to Led Zeppelin
Stones,
to the Kinks to whatever. Right. And so, meanwhile, I'm out on a date with a girl. I'm slapping a little Al Green in the 8-track.
Nice. Yeah.
Just lay back, baby.
Attaboy, Joe.
So I have this big taste in music. Okay, so at some point when we're all just dying to be hippies,
right?
We're the first ones, right? And it's like a guy with a beard and long hair is the coolest guy on earth.
That's still today, by the way.
And, yeah, right. And so all of my friends are listening to this music, Led Zeppelin, whatever it is, the Beatles, and they're just like knocking around on the floor. And I'm watching these old movies where Fred Astaire has got the woman in an embrace, and I'm going, I want to do that.
Right.
Yeah. So I started taking ballroom
dancing
dancing when I was 16.
God, I love those movies growing up too.
I took a heap of abuse for it.
Oh, I bet. Well, 16-year-old boy dancing ballroom. The first thing you think is A Twinkle Toes.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, it's definitely a gay thing. Right. And so, but that just continued on through my life. And so what happened was I was always in dance clubs, dancing in formal dance clubs. Whether it was ballroom or East Coast, West Coast, or even two-stepping at country bars, doesn't matter to me.
Right.
If I just got to be...
It's a good way to meet the ladies.
It's a great way.
Right.
And there is a certain sect of women who, if they find out you can dance...
Yep. Well, they know that you can do other things, too.
So, okay. So it's a Saturday night. The night parade is happening in Ybor City.
Right.
I live on the south side, so I can walk up and still go back home and leave. I'm not being impeded.
You don't have to worry about the sidewalk being closed.
So I decide I was going to go out dancing later. So I go up to 7th Avenue, and I'm going to smoke a cigar and a Robusto maybe, and have a cafe. And Kyle is there.
Yeah.
And Kyle says, "Hey, come over here." And so I'm like,
I'm your pusher, man.
Yeah, right. And that's right. And the little Satan on one shoulder, and Casper the friendly angel or something. Anyway, so we did this thing. We did a little hit. Nothing, right? And I go into the cafe side, and I'm at a high top, and I'm having my coffee. And the next thing I know, I'm on the floor. I'm done. And fortunately, did not crack my head on anything.
Yes.
And by the way,
like you actually fell.
I passed out.
Oh shit.
Oh yeah. And have you ever passed out?
Yeah.
Not from marijuana.
Not from marijuana, but I have passed out.
Yeah.
Okay, passing out is a very weird experience.
Yeah, you wake up going, where am I? What happened? Why am I all white?
It's very disorienting.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know what just happened. And so they're picking me up off the floor, and I'm not the youngest guy there, although this is quite a while ago.
Right.
And so they call EMS.
Oh,
in the middle of the night parade?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And so EMS shows up.
Oh, boy.
And they come in, and the guy's taking my blood pressure. And I said, I don't need this. I'm sorry. I don't, I want to refuse treatment. I don't need this, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, and this guy says, "Sir, you have no blood pressure."
Oh, wow.
He said, it's in the basement, like
Right,
deep.
yeah, like that's bad,
Like
real bad.
I can't legally
Like go to the hospital.
leave you here.
Yeah.
And I go, You're kidding, right? And I said, I had coffee, know, and I'm not even thinking that what Kyle gave me had anything to do with it. And here's the problem. We don't know, because here's what actually happened. They take me to the hospital. By the way, that was a scene because they had to go out the back door in the alley.
To the alleyway.
Because they couldn't even get out the front.
Right. That's what I was thinking, is they have to come in the back way.
And they get me to Tampa General at emergency on a Saturday night.
On the night parade.
Of the night parade.
And the place is packed. A rompous room of raucous crap going down. People have been shot. I don't know. I mean, seriously,
OD,
it was like it was like the MASH unit on its worst. And I'm like, oh my God! And they finally get me up to a room, right? And they get me in, and they're testing and testing, and they're taking this test. And it seems to me, with my limited medical knowledge, nonetheless, that I had every test that is possible.
Yeah.
I mean, they tested my brain. They tested everything, and So and Don came to visit me, by the way, and so the
Probably
next
for liability, make sure you're not going to sue.
yeah.
Right now.
So so here's the deal. The next morning, I'm in my room, and this young cardiologist from USF, because Tampa General and USF are doing this teaching college relationship. He comes in, and he's very, kind of like, I know everything,
right?
And that's cool. I dig that. And so I'm like, okay, fine. And he says, what we determined is that you were dehydrated. And I said, he said, when did you last drink water? And I said, water?
Sir, it was a night parade, right?
Yeah, exactly, right.
Right. And I said, water. He said, yeah, when did you last drink water? And I said, let's see, last night was Saturday.
I've stepped in a couple puddles on the way here, if that helps. Yeah.
1983.
I don't remember drinking water on Friday.
There's water and Diet Coke,
Thursday, right? And he said, what happens is if you don't drink water, the electrolytes get thrown off, and it can cause cardiac problems. And I went, oh. And he said, but we don't know that's what happened.
Right.
And I said, well, it must be what happened because, and I told him, I said, now that I think about this, my mother said, brush your teeth after you eat.
Yeah.
Look both ways when you cross the street. She never said, drink water when you're not thirsty.
Right, which you have to do.
And that's what you actually have to do, right? So I believe that it did not have to do with Kyle. I believe that it had to do with...
The ring light.
Okay.
I believe that it had to do with me being dehydrated.
Okay, so Kyle's off the hook. All right.
Yeah,
I'll let
tell
him know.
Kyle he's okay.
Because he moved all the way out to Valrico. He's like, I don't know if I can show my face around there.
That's kind of funny, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Now, what is interesting is that I didn't have insurance.
Okay. Oh, damn. USA. Anyway.
Yeah, right.
All right. On that note,
it was only $30,000.
Well, that's not bad.
For that one night.
That's not bad.
so that even stings out with what
it
you
was
paid.
a nice room.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, it even stings out for what you paid for your house.
Just
Yeah,
a
there you
pricey
go. There you
Airbnb.
go. Yeah.
So since we're at an hour and a half,
Yeah.
I'm just going to wrap up. I got one last question.
All right.
Sure.
Digging deep like I was before,
Yeah.
I came across a comment. I was telling him I could not find it again because you and I are not friends on Facebook, and so
Which you should be.
Yeah, I agree. But there are multiple Joe Howdens out there, and I wasn't sure, So I may not
No,
have...
on Facebook, I'm Joe King Carter.
I know that now.
Oh, but
Okay,
they still comment things like Joe Howden did this and
Yeah,
Joe
yeah,
Howden
that's
did
how
that.
Of course, I understand.
Yeah. And so-
I'm living in two universes at
Well, that's
once.
why when I in the introduction I said you know him as Joe King Carter, but you probably remember him as
Yeah,
Joe.
right. So
we didn't go into the thing about me uniting with my biological family.
Oh, we're gonna have you back.
I
Joe.
read about it. Yeah.
I am going to legally change my name to Joe
excellent.
King Carter.
Very cool. So I don't know if this comment was pertaining to you.
Yeah.
Joe
Okay.
Howden as much, but because I could not find it again, man.
Yes.
I searched, I went through every pink, purple link that I had
Yeah,
already
right.
clicked. And I couldn't find shit. So
Out with it.
I have to know what's up with peanut butter cups.
Peanut butter cups?
Might be a different one.
Damn it!
So
Some lady had commented somewhere,
Yeah.
and they were talking about Joe Howden in Tampa.
Yeah.
And she said, because of Joe Howden, I will never look at peanut butter cups the same way ever again. And I had to know what the hell that was about. But
Must be one that just was it either a different Joe Howden or something that flew under your radar.
I don't think there's another Joe Howden in Tampa. So I'm going to guess that this has to do with an adult activity.
That's what I was assuming as well, because that was a connotation of what I got from.
And I would love to know. I would love to know what that woman's name is.
Damn it. If I could find it again, I will.
I'll get you some contact information. When you get that information, send it to Joe. They can reconnect.
I searched high and low because I like the one about the radiant rollers. I screenshotted so I wouldn't lose it. And I forgot to screenshot that one.
Well, all I can say to you is this for both of you is that whenever you are with your partner alone in the bedroom, always bring a peanut butter cup.
Oh, okay, all right.
There we go.
That's a good way to wrap things up, Joe. Joe, we have to have you back because there's a lot more to talk about.
I would love to do it.
Anytime you'd like to. In the meantime, anything to add, Taylor?
No, man, I'm good, except for just the usual, stop by YborMutaPodcast.com, send us all your letters, tell me about all the crazy shit you've endured in Ybor. I want to hear it. Man, we've really been picking up with a lot of the people. They're obviously using the site. They're obviously reaching out.
You're doing good stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much.
Before we go, we want to mention that you can also hear Joe talk a lot every Wednesday on WMNF on your show, The Conversation with Mario Nunez, legend Mario Nunez.
And what time is that?
You should have Mario on, by the way.
Well, absolutely.
His grandfather was a lector.
Oh, okay. We're talking to Mario.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yes, it's every Wednesday at noon, right? Every Wednesday at noon,
WMNF 88.5 FM, The Conversation.
Very good.
Excellent.
All right. Well, we're going to have many more conversations, Joe. Thanks for coming. Really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
guys.
Thank you so much, man.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. See you next time.
Have a great night.